Over the past year, the M4 iPad Pro has become my primary computing device. Yeah, me, the Mac guy, finds himself reaching for this before my M4 Mac Mini, before my M4 MacBook Air, and certainly before my Apple Vision Pro. The hardware on this is frankly perfect. It is impossibly thin, it is ridiculously powerful, and that tandem OLED display is fantastic. The reason I think it finally clicked with me wasn't because I started pushing iPadOS to its limits. In fact, I think it was because I stopped trying to. I wasn't really using Stage Manager. I wasn't juggling multiple windows. Heck, I was mostly just using single full screen apps like it was 2010. And when I needed something more, well, I just go to my Mac or fire up Remote Desktop. That all changed about 2 months ago when I started testing iPadOS 26. And look, I'm not gonna sugarcoat this. This update is going to throw a lot of people straight into the deep end of the pool. Apple finally stopped fighting the concept of windowing and they've embraced it, but in the most Apple way possible. There are 3 different modes, each with their own quirks, and absolutely zero guidance on which one you should actually use or how to use them. So rather than make you stumble through the same learning curve I did, I want to help you build a productive workflow from day one. This isn't walking you through every feature of iPadOS 26. It's about helping you set up a successful environment so that you don't completely faceplant on the surprisingly slippery road to iPad productivity. And no, this is not going to be another "can you replace your iPad with a laptop" video. We're done with that conversation. For some workflows, like mine, we've been able to do that for years. For others, say if you're a developer married to your IDE, it might not ever be possible. You already know which camp you're in, so let's stop debating whether or not you should use an iPad for real work and focus on how to actually make it work if you can. Because with the right setup, this thing just absolutely rips. You just need to know where to start. Part 1, 3 windowing modes, no correct choice. Okay, so if you navigate to Settings and scroll down to Multitasking and Gestures, you will see the 3 multitasking modalities and environments that are available to you. They're the same 3 that you see when you set up iPadOS 26 for the first time. But don't think that whatever you pick, you have to be married to. And don't think that you can't and shouldn't toggle between them, because I actually really believe you should. The default still remains full screen apps, and this is the classic iPad experience. One app gets your full attention. And honestly, I still use this really often, mostly when I'm not in work mode and I want to use my iPad for casual messaging or video consumption, but it can still be handy for work when just one app requires your full attention and you want to eliminate kind of other distractions. I really do think of it as a focus mode. However, in a very controversial decision, Apple decided to strip out split view and slide over. You used to be able to swipe up from the dock, take an app, drag it side by side and have a 50-50 split. You can still do that in the windowed environments, but not in the classic full screen iPad deal. That's a bummer. You also used to be able to swipe in from the side to pull up little tiny iPhone-sized versions of your apps while still using a primary full screen app, and that's also gone. And that's a real bummer because I frequently use Safari when writing, and wrangling windows is harder than just a little hello, goodbye that I used to be able to do with that specific window. Multiple app instances via full screen windows does still work. So here in Safari, I can drag up from the dock, hold the Safari icon down, and say new window. Okay? You just have to access them via the app switcher now or via pressing an icon on the dock. So here's my app switcher. So I have 2 Safari things. I can also go into Safari. I can go here, I can swipe up, I can hold down, and I can say, show all windows. So there you go. By the way, you might think, I'll just use the new menu bar. No, you can't. That doesn't work in the full screen app environment. One huge improvement to single window mode is inheriting the new Background Tasks API. Now, while few exist at the moment because iPadOS 26 isn't out, I will demo with Apple's Files app. I can take season 10 of this television show off of my server and I can drag it onto my iPad. I already have it, apparently. So it's gonna ask me if I wanna replace it. I can say yes, and it will begin the copy. Now, previously, I had to remain inside the Files app, or the iPad after a couple of minutes would just kill the background process. That's no longer the case. I can go to another app and it will keep doing its thing in the background. Again, this will extend to third-party apps. So you can be exporting a video in your video editor. You can be bouncing a podcast, doing whatever you need to do. It will keep running in the background, and at any given time, you can refer back to it. It's really, really great. Okay, let's talk about the thing that Apple actually cares about, and that is the new windowed apps mode. This is what Apple is advertising and suggesting as the primary environment. You can turn it on via settings, or there's also a quick toggle you can add to Control Center to switch between it and single window mode, which is very, very handy. Now, this gives you the ability to put effectively unlimited apps and windows in a single workspace. It's not technically unlimited, but it is effectively unlimited. Your window quantity is limited only by the memory on your iPad. And so I can just start opening windows here. And it's really a struggle in this version of iPadOS, this beta, while I have a big old screen recording going on in the background. But I can start opening windows and my iPad will appear to start chugging, but I can just keep opening them and opening them and opening them, and they'll open forever. Sure, why not this? In fact, why don't we just open another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 windows. Okay, cool. Now when I drag up from the dock, you'll see that I have 8 windows. I can keep going. Sure, why not? Let's open preview. Holy crap, that is laggy. We have indeed reached our limit, and that is 12 windows. Now, it's not typically as laggy when I'm not screen recording. Have I ever really had 12 windows open on purpose? No, but I can have 12. Now, this will be limited by the memory available on your device. So if you've got an older iPad, it's probably not going to be 12, but every iPad that supports iPadOS 26 or later is capable of having at minimum 5 windows open, which is greater than the number that were previously allowed with Stage Manager in iOS 18. Okay, you might have noticed when I was opening all of these windows that when you open an app for the first time, it opens in full screen even when you're in a windowed environment. You can drag with your cursor or with your finger to resize windows from the side or from this pull tab. Now, you can't drag from the side with your finger. You can only drag from here. Once it's small, then you can drag. It's kind of a weird thing, but I guess it makes sense. They need to make room for slide over, which doesn't exist anymore. Oh, this is important. Window size and positioning is retained permanently. So if I take this window and I make it this size and I put it over here in the corner and then I kill it, which I can do by pressing Command W, when I reopen it, it will be in the exact same spot at the exact same size. This is great, and the Mac doesn't even really reliably do this. It's supposed to, but it doesn't. And so this has really become a big way of how I set up my workflow, as you will soon see. Oh, something else really cool. iPhone-only apps no longer take up the full entire screen. They just run in their own little window, basically the size of your phone. You have a tiny little floating iPhone on your iPad. Oh, this app? Thanks for asking. This is today's sponsor, Mova, and their V50 Ultra Complete Robot Vacuum. Mova's V50 Ultra Complete landed at my place with something I haven't seen in years of testing robot vacuums. Actual accessories. We're not just talking a couple spare filters, we're talking spare brushes, 6 pairs of mop pads, dust bags, a full liter of cleaning solution, over $200 worth of stuff that usually you would be nickeled and dimed for. But here's why I'm actually talking about this thing. Vacuum Wars, fellow YouTuber who tests these things independently, no sponsorships, just crowned this vacuum his top performer for 2025. The carpet performance is ridiculous. 24,000 pascals of suction, serious airflow, and this Trobo Wave Duo Brush system that you really have to see to believe. Foot-long hair strands of hair on the floor? Nothing tangled. It's amazing. That's the first RoboVac I've used that can actually make that claim. This is also the first robot with a dual solution tank, one half for everyday cleaning and the other half dedicated to pet odor neutralization. The system switches between them automatically, and there's not some proprietary canister, you just fill it up by hand. Thank you. Now, the drive motors, they're silent, like actually silent. Yet this thing can stand up on its haunches and climb over 6-centimeter thresholds. That's like 2 inches of vert, dog. Now, when the motorized laser navigation detects low clearance, it can physically drop to slide under furniture. And if you hit carpet, well, the mop pads automatically detach and lift away. No wet mop pads dragging across your rugs, no manual intervention needed. Oh, and the mop pads themselves, they flex in order to maintain constant contact against your tiling, which is frankly often inconsistent. They can get down in the grout, which is pretty sick. And that's in addition to all of the features that we now just kind of take for granted. An auto empty and washing dock, built-in drying, an extending side brush and mop pad, spectacular obstacle avoidance, and more. The Mova V50 Ultra Complete can be had for less than any other flagship robot vacuum at the link below. Okay, traffic light buttons have arrived to the iPad and they work just like they do on the Mac, except for actually, no they don't. When you minimize a window, rather than go to the right side of the dock, it goes back into the app icon, which might beg the question, Why use minimize at all? Why don't I just close the window with Command W or with the red X? Well, because if I tap this, this app that I just minimized, you'll see that it opens exactly where it was. But if I close it with the red X, then guess what, buddy? It relaunches the next time I click it. So in my opinion, there's no real reason to close an app. Just minimize it all the time, and your iPad will move it out of memory if it ever needs to make space. Additionally, you can use your cursor to hold on this little green button, and you pull up a window that gives you the ability to do side-by-side views. This is not new to the iPad. This is basically the same slide over split view, and you have that same nib that you've always had to kind of resize on the fly. But what you can do, in addition to horizontal splits, is there are now vertical splits, which is fantastic. So if I go up here and I hold this button, I can go up, which is beautiful. And if it looks like I'm struggling doing this, it's because I always use the hotkeys instead. So if you use globe control right and left, that gives you right and left, and up and down does the upper half and lower half. Isn't that so much better than fiddling with traffic things? There are a couple other ways to do that, which I'll mention briefly. Let's now talk about the third and final windowing method, Stage Manager, which is actually good now and my preferred way to use the iPad. Let me show you a little pro tip. Rather than having to go into settings to turn these things on and off, you can go into Control Center, and you already saw that there's the Windowed Apps toggle, but if you hold the Windows app toggle down, you can change it to Stage Manager. Isn't that neat? So you can toggle between all three directly from Control Center. Stage Manager is no longer the awkward middle child. Right now I have 4 windows, and this is what Stage Manager was previously limited to. But check this out, buddy. I'm gonna grab a Safari window, I'm gonna drag it in. 5 windows in Stage Manager, this is crazy! The oldest doesn't get kicked out. Well, it does eventually, but only when you have, same as with the windowed method, 12 windows available, or whatever your iPad is limited to memory-wise. Now, getting used to window shuffling is honestly a little bit daunting, and even with 2 months of practice under my belt, I still struggle a little bit sometimes. But very simply, if you swipe up from the home bar with 1 finger, and or if you slowly swipe up with 3 fingers on your trackpad, you will enter your kind of multitasking window where you can see all of the active windows in a given stage. Now, swiping over on the multitasker shows other stages and or single open windows. And clicking outside of a window when you're in this multitasker just goes to the desktop with all of the windows at the side, kind of like Expose on the Mac. I can tap my apps and that stage will come back into play. Pretty cool. Swiping up with 3 fingers fast on the trackpad and or swiping home entirely just takes you back home. But getting back to a stage is not always as simple as you might think. You can enter the multitasker anew, but you'll kind of notice that it takes you to some random spot. I'm not really sure if that's a bug or that's intentional. You can slide to the end and then click your specific stage, or you can just swipe along the home bar as you've always been able to toggle between stages, which works really quite well. Opening windows in a stage is trivial, but it's not necessarily intuitive because if I tap on an app icon from the dock, it doesn't open in my existing stage, it creates a new one. So you actually have to, in an existing stage, swipe up from the bottom to bring up your dock, and then once you've got your dock, you hold the icon and drag it out of the dock to open it in an existing stage. You can do the same thing from Spotlight, so if I go to Mova, I can drag Mova out onto my stage and it will open here. Now, if you have an app that supports multiple windows like Safari, I can do Option Command N and that will open up a new window of the same application in an existing stage. But this has to be enabled by developers. If I try to do that with Todoist, nothing happens. And that's because there can only be 1 app instance total at a given time. That's another thing that is kind of frustrating. So if you try to open Todoist inside of another stage, it's going to rip it out of this stage and put it in that one. Whereas Safari, well, I can have multiple Safari windows in any given stage because it supports multiple windows, and hopefully other app developers in due time will allow us to put the same apps in multiple different stages, regardless of window positioning. Okay. Moving windows between stages is really pretty weird because you can only pull windows from other stages. You cannot push them to a given stage. Let me explain with a demo. If I pick up this window here, you might think that I can just drag this window onto one of these stages. But if I try to do that, no, it just creates a new stage with this window all by its lonesome. That's not really what I'm going for. So what I have to do is go to my destination stage where I want the window to appear, and then I go to my source stage inside of the Stage Manager, and I just pick up a window and drag it in. That's very weird, right? Now, you might think that you can drag the window in by just highlighting the app icon and maybe dragging the icon in, but nope, that doesn't work at all. You have to pull from the tiny specific little view window in the specific stage. Isn't that just completely bizarre? And it works fine, right? But what if you have 5 windows and one window is buried behind all of the other windows super deep? Honestly, I don't know. My solution is to go to that stage, to surface the window on top, then go back to my other stage, and then try to drag it in. Maybe I'm dumb, but I don't think so. If anybody knows a better way, I mean, knock stuff out. Now, you can click this little app icon. Here, let me go to a better stage. I can click one of these little app icons, but all it does is it shows me all of the windows of that specific app. So because I have 2 Safari windows open, one in its own stage and one inside this big mega stage, that's how I see it, but that's all. And so most of the time, if I click one of these apps, because apps in general just have one specific instance. So let me come over here. I'm gonna try to open up Mova. Nothing happens because there's only one instance of Mova. It's inside this stage. Really kind of strange, right? Okay, so the new windowing method and Stage Manager, I think, are best suited for task-based workflows. And that's why I like Stage Manager, because I have a research stage, a writing stage, an admin stage. And if you don't have stages, you just get a bajillion windows on top. And even if you do have stages, I mean, look, it has the tendency to happen. And so if you don't have a rhyme or reason for things being where they are, it just becomes too convoluted and you spend more time moving windows around than you actually spend getting things done. And that's no good at all. I do think there are a couple of settings that you do need to change, however, on day one to vastly improve the experience of both the dock and the Stage Manager. Okay, automatically show and hide dock, turn that on, because otherwise you're gonna have the dock always in your way. It's easy to accidentally bump into. It still hides when you make your windows go full screen. And so just get it out of there. It's consistent and it's better that it swipes up and goes away intentionally when needed. As for Stage Manager, I turn off automatically show and hide recent apps because then the stages actually go away. When you have just a couple of windows and you really want to be dead locked in and focused, they're not in your way, but you can still pull this out and drag windows into your environment when you need. I think it's just a much better solution. I think that it's worth configuring these things and configuring your stages before you actually need them because setup will pay dividends. Part 2. Window management power moves. All right, let's start with the essential gestures and shortcuts, beginning with window snapping. If it looks like I don't know what I'm doing with the cursor and I've been futzing around, it's because, honestly, true. I don't really know how to use this thing because like on macOS, you can hold down Option and drag the window to the side and it will snap. That does not work on the iPad. Why? I don't get it. So I never use the cursor. I always use keyboard shortcuts. And all you really need to remember is globe, control, and arrow key. Left goes left, right goes right, bottom, top. Pretty obvious, cool. All right, now you can also move with your finger. So if I take my finger and I throw the window right and left, it will snap to the right and left sides of the screen respectively. Now, I know what you're thinking. Oh, that means I can throw up and it'll go to the upper half. No, it goes full screen. And if you throw the window down, it just closes entirely. I do not understand why they've made these behaviors different and I hate it. I don't like it at all. Put it back, okay? Now, a bunch of other tiling and positioning methods can be accessed like we discussed previously through the green traffic light icon, but I think there's a better way to do that. That's to go to the menu bar, to go to Window, and then Move and Resize. You have your halves and you can see Control, Globe, and your hotkeys, or your arrow keys, which is what I just told you. You can also make your windows go into quarters. There are no hotkeys for that, so you have to do that through the Windows menu, which I don't necessarily love. But then there's also an Arrange menu, and this is great because if you have 2 apps or multiple apps, you can just retile them automatically. So I can make these go top and bottom, boom, without having to do each window manually. That's great. You can also resize from any given corner. So I told you that you can resize from the right corner, but you can also resize from up here. You can resize from down here. You can resize with your finger here. It's super easy. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Well, hold on. Let's say I go full screen and I want to resize from the top. Well, crap, I just opened Control Center. Well, that doesn't need to be that way. If you hold your finger up here and then move inwards, Control Center doesn't open. So you just have to kind of hold before you make the action and then things will move as they should. I also mentioned earlier that you can use a cursor to resize windows on a single axis by pulling the side of the window. Now it is possible with your fingers as well, but only once the window is no longer full screen. So here's a pro tip. If you're full screen, you can just use Globe F to make the window smaller and then you can drag and drop. And basically what happens when you have a window open full screen for the first time is it's going to become just barely smaller. It's like that big. So now I'm full screen. Oh, now I'm not full screen. But crap, as soon as it's like this, I can take my finger and drag, no problem. It's just when it's full screen, for whatever reason, I can't drag. You would think that's because slide over is there, but it's not. So I don't know. There's some things that they need to work out that have been this way all summer, and I'm like, they're gonna fix this in the next beta, but now iOS 26 is out and they're not fixed. Cool. App switching remains the same as prior versions of iPadOS, which is to say the same as macOS. Command tab to advance through your apps, Command tilde to go back. But it's more important than ever, because not only can you toggle between multiple apps and windows in the same stage, you can also toggle to different stages entirely by using this same gesture, which is really, really great. Not a gesture, hotkey, whatever. Speaking of gestures, a 3-finger swipe on the trackpad, as I mentioned previously, or a home bar swipe opens up your stages and multitasking spaces. But you can also do a 4-finger pinch and or a 5-finger pinch. Basically, you can do anything and get to this view. And then tapping the home screen goes to the home screen, tapping those windows opens back up the same stage. You tired yet? Part 3, productivity power features. In iPadOS 26, you can trick Apple Intelligence into being useful. Look, we all know about the built-in models that came out last year, like writing tools and Memoji, and wow, look, Benjamin doesn't feel like he's gonna get fired. Wait, no, he still is. He's just being fired more friendly. Okay, cool. These models weren't even really that special. What was great about them is that they were usually run locally on device, but sometimes they weren't. They were sometimes offloaded to private cloud compute, but there was no transparency as to when that was happening, and you couldn't prompt the models yourself. Well, now you can, thanks to AI actions inside of Shortcuts. So now inside of Shortcuts in iPadOS and iOS 26, there is an Apple Intelligence section. And not only can you choose the model you want to use, the on-device model, private cloud compute, or even ChatGPT, but you can actually prompt the model with a real prompt, which is super, super cool. And let me give you an example of why this is cool. So I'm going to open up List Creator, which is a shortcut I made. When I launch this shortcut, it wants me to dictate text. It's then going to take the text and feed it to the LLM with this block of instructions. The LLM is going to spit it out. Oh, by the way, I'm using the cloud model, but I could use any model I want. It's then going to spit it out to my phone, which is locally going to use the on-device model to make a list out of whatever is spit out by the cloud model. And then it's going to go through a bunch of things and make a to-doist list. So let me demo this for you and show you what it actually does. Okay, I'm going on a trip tomorrow, and I need to make a packing list. I need some pants, probably like 4 or 5. I need 2 shirts. No, I need 3 shirts and my AirPods, I guess. I push stop. The shortcut will finish running in the background, and it looks like nothing's happened. But that's because in the background, it's pushing to Todoist. And by the way, I'm doing this right now from the Shortcuts app, but you can do this from anywhere. You can run a shortcut from inside of Control Center, you can run it from Siri, you can do it from wherever you want. And now if I scroll down in my to-do list to list, you'll see 4 or 5 pants, 3 shirts, and AirPods. Isn't that super cool? This is just a small example, and this is just the beginning, but you can now pull data from system apps like weather, calendar, reminders. You can feed it into an LLM with your own prompt, and you can get summaries or actions based on whatever you fed it. They're literally contextual automations that actually understand context. It's the promise of what Apple Intelligence was supposed to be. The thing is, you just have to set it all up manually. But it does work, and it's cool, and it has enhanced my iPad-ish experience by doing some Mac-like things. And I don't know, maybe get subscribed. I'll tell you some of what those might be later in the future. Okay, the Files app not being garbage has also helped me immensely in moving to the iPad. There's a few new features that I want to highlight in particular. There's a bunch of new features, but there's a couple in particular that are really great. One thing that's not great is the fact that when you come from a space and the window's resized, it doesn't actually look very good, and you have to quit the app and then you have to reopen it. Goodness gracious. Thank you. The Files app is still pretty buggy, and that makes sense because it experienced the most changes. I could spend 30 minutes going through every single one, but I will spare you the pain and suffering and talk about 3 things that I really think you should look into. Number 1, in iCloud Drive, you can right-click on any file, folder, or archive and keep it downloaded on your iPad. Anything you put in there will stay there, which is fantastic because the last thing you want to do is get on a plane thinking you have contracts, and then you get on the plane and they're not there, and you're like, oh, I'll just download them on the plane Wi-Fi, but then the Wi-Fi on the plane's down, and then you're like, well, I guess I'll just watch a movie, and you don't have any movies on your iPad, so you just have to stare in front of the seat back in front of you because you don't have wired headphones, because who has those in 2025, and there's no Bluetooth in the infotainment on the plane? The other thing you can do is go into column mode and find this little window. If you're not in column mode, you can also do it from list and icons mode. You just have to right click and then click get info. And you can set a default application with which to open this specific file extension. So PDFs, I can open them in preview, or I can open them in PDF Gear. Now every single time it's gonna say, are you sure you wanna change the default app for every single PDF? And you just say, yeah. But that's great because there are a lot of apps that think they can deal with specific file types and they can't, and it destroys things and it's a nightmare. This is a great improvement. The last thing that I like, but I'm also kind of confused by, is keeping apps and folders inside the dock. Okay, so you can now color and add emoji and also SF symbols to folders and files now, and they sync across your Mac and your iPad. That's great, but they don't actually show in your dock. Like, I get that it wouldn't maybe show the color, but at least show the icon. No, it doesn't. But you can right click any folder and then say add to and dock. And now when I swipe up, it will be in the dock. Now you'll note that it is cascading kind of like it does inside of macOS as a stack, but you can also hold down on the folder and then change it to a grid view. The one thing I don't like though is if you have longer file folder names, they don't show you the whole file name. And if I hold my cursor over it, unlike macOS where it shows me the entire path and the entire name, it doesn't. So like, this is scriorts. What is that? I don't know. So I just keep it inside of fan view for now. Hopefully they fix that. All right. And now we've reached the apex of the video, part 4, putting it all together. How have I made the iPad work for me? How have I made this my daily computer? Well, I have a couple guiding principles and rules that I think might help you because they've certainly helped me. First rule, let the iPad be the iPad sometimes. That's okay, meaning single app, easy peasy use. It's exciting, this new windowing feature, but the reality is windowing can get frustrating, especially when your brain isn't inside of workspace mode. The iPad is such a great single app computer, and so let it keep doing that. Toggle between these modes frequently. Second rule, no more home screens. We're dock people now. When you're using windowing, look, I mean, your home screen's gone. It disappears, right? And summoning and moving apps, that is all done via the dock. And so it's a huge paradigm shift. But you gotta load this baby up. Your dock is your new launcher. You can see that I basically have nothing on my home screen. And it's really nice. And while that's not required, I think it makes the experience better. If you really wanna go further with things, I think you could set up a focus mode. So you have a focus mode that's just like regular iPad with all your icons on the big screen. And then you have a work or performance mode where you have a more minimalist desktop. If you really wanted to get fancy, you could have a shortcut triggered from Control Center that would enter the iPad focus mode and then turn off windowing. Now that would be pretty cool. Maybe I should make that. Third rule, pre-map your workspaces. Remember, window panes retain their size and their location. You don't have the real estate or windowing instance flexibility of a Mac. So if you try to make this feel like a Mac, you're just in for a bad time. At the same time, does window location and size really matter when you have such a small amount of space to begin with? That's why I use Stage Manager. Now, how have I pre-mapped my workspace? Shortcuts, baby. Check this out. If I swipe down from Control Center, I have a shortcut called Stagecraft. I think that's a great name. And what it does is it crafts my stages. Did I use ChatGPT to come up with that? No, I did that all by myself. Once I click it, it is going to go through and make all of my stages. I now have 5 workspaces in which I can do my work. I have my writing workspace, I have a communication workspace, I have an AI workspace, and I have a browsing workspace. It works really, really well for me. I wish there was a little bit more flexibility here. If I go into shortcuts and show you how this is built out, you're gonna be like, wow, that's really simple because, well, basically it is. All I do is I say I want to turn Stage Manager on if it's off, and then I want to create split screens between specific apps. And all you can do is open 2 apps side by side, and they can either be 50-50 or 66-33. That's probably why they called it 2/3 and 1/3. That's all you can do right now. I wish they let you put multiple windows in a specific space. I'm hoping that Apple improves this in the future, but for right now, it's a really great way to, no matter where I am, I can restart. I hit one button and I've got a blank slate filled with all of the apps I need exactly in the layout that I want. It is fantastic. Fourth rule, master muscle memory or suffer. Since windowing relies heavily on gestures and shortcuts, you gotta learn your stuff. Again, Globe, Control, Arrow is going to do most of what you need to. Command Tab, your 3-finger swipes, etc. You either commit to learning these gestures properly, or you're just going to be consistently fumbling around iPadOS, because it's no less complicated than it's ever been, and frankly, it demands intentionality. You can't just wing it like you might be able to on a Mac, even if on the surface it seems like the iPad and the Mac are closer than they've ever been before. They're really not. And now to my 5th and final rule, except that some things are just gonna kind of suck. Despite all of its improvements, some things remain clunky compared to a real desktop. Some workloads are not really well served without a real desktop, and rather than fight these limitations and build workflows around them, just do what I do. Give up and go to your Mac or connect to it remotely and do the thing you need to do and then go back to your iPad. Works for me. Okay. Try one new feature this week. Don't overwhelm yourself by jumping into the deep end. Start slow and recognize that it's going to take weeks, if not months, to get fully accustomed to this new navigation paradigm. Share your productivity setups. What am I missing? Have I gone about this all wrong? And what windowing method are you going to choose, and why? That was a trick question. You're supposed to use all of them, because that's the way you ought to. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, stay snazzy.